Good morning. Welcome to the original Loretta Brown Show, radio to open the heart, heal the soul, and awaken the consciousness. What a powerful, powerful new moon we had this week. And for those people out driving, there's sun coming up. Benny, do you see that?
What? It's for real, people. It actually exists. We've made it.
I know.
Well, for today.
For today. Like last week was fog, you know?
Yeah, and then it's just been miserable all week. And breath of fresh air and sunshine. Gotta love it. Brings the wonderful day for Thursday.
You do.
Your show, especially.
Yeah, especially to my show, bringing sunlight to my show, which we could use some
of that. It was all you, really.
Yeah, it's me.
It's all you. Nothing to do with
Radiant self. Thank you. Thank you to my amazing Benini. Yes, thank you.
I sound like a food. Every time you say that, like, there's a panini, I know that. I almost feel like, hey, everybody, you want to go out and get a panini?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it
does kind of sound like that, but
right,
I think you've got a winning idea there.
What sounds good today? Oh, I'll try the panini.
The panini, yeah.
That sounds great. Is that special? Is that on special?
Well, that takes me back to, panini in the mouth, but,
right.
that's
the great panini in the
mouth. The alternate name to our show.
Sorry, that'd be a great show title to go on the tour
great.
with or whatever. The great panini in
the mouth. Yeah. Anyway, I hope you're having fun. And we had that time change. And so, I don't know what the deal is with that. In the fall, I love it. And in the spring, I can't figure out what time it is. One of my friends posted the other day. She said, it's 3:30. It's actually only 2:30, but it feels like 4:30. And that's kind of how it is.
I've felt that before, too.
Yeah. So anyway, great week. Wonderful week with the stars. Venus is retrograde. Mars is in Taurus. So do expect a little bit of challenging energy this week, a few setbacks. But it's just always asking you to respond with compassion and patience. So this week was kind of a week of looking back. I had a lot of my clients tell me that they were just sort of seeing cycles of repetition in their life and the feedback loops that your habits and proclivities have you spinning upon. So if you found yourself going round and round in this last week of Pisces, be at ease with the ever-spinning reels of images as we come full circle in the cycle of the signs of the zodiac. Because Pisces is the last sign, and then what are we getting ready to go into? The first sign of the zodiac, which is Aries. And that Aries energy always kind of gets us up and gets us moving forward. Today is Thursday. The day after tomorrow is Saturday, and Mercury in Aries will conjunct retrograde Venus in Aries, and it will be a perfect day to talk to an old lover about what went wrong between you, mending a misunderstanding. So this could be your opportunity. Confessions of love and affection may flow more easily than usual. So Saturday will be a day where conversation can be much more meaningful, and even with Venus retrograde. And her influence over Mercury is still one of sweetening. So what I'm really trying to say, put it into simple English, Saturday is a great day for you to speak about something you've been wanting to speak about, because your words will be filled with honey. And that's a lovely, lovely thing. So you might be able to say that, those things you've been wanting to say. Good idea on Saturday. I am, by the way, Loretta Brown, the owner of Reiki Oasis, located right here in the greater Seattle area. We've been around over 21 years now, and lots of good things happening. This coming weekend, we have the Temple of the Divine Feminine workshop, and on Reiki First is on April 1st. Reiki 1 is on April 1st, and that's not an April Fool's joke. Not at all. The class is almost full, so if you want to get in and learn about beautiful Reiki, do sign up for everything at schedule.reikioasis.com. And as always, a wonderful big shout out to the supporters of this show. We are listener supported through patreon.com/The Loretta Brown Show. So today I have a wonderful guest, and I've been looking forward to having him on the show. I actually met him a couple of months ago at the East West Bookshop here in Seattle, and If you don't know about the East West Bookshop, you should check it out. They have lots of guest speakers that come through. They have a nice little meeting room. It's intimate. And you have the opportunity to talk to people that you may not otherwise have been able to do. So my guest today is Dr. Amit Goswami, and he is a theoretical quantum physicist, a retired full professor from the University of Oregon's Department of Physics, where he served from 1968 to 1997, and he is a pioneer of the new paradigm of science called science within consciousness. Science within consciousness. I love that. And he talked about this in his first book, The Self-Aware Universe, which I think he wrote back in 1998, and I hope that's right. He has written, 11 books, I think, and he's got a new book coming out April 1st called The Everything Answer Book. Quantum Science Explains Love, Death, and the Meaning of Life. And I have to tell you that you just need to read the book now. I mean, because it's got all the answers in it. Dr. Goswami was also in the film What the Bleep Do We Know? And its sequel, Down the Rabbit Hole, as well as the documentaries The Dalai Lama Renaissance and the award-winning The Quantum Activist. And so, Dr. Goswami, welcome to the show. It is such a pleasure and an honor to have you here this morning.
Oh, thank you, Loretta. It's always a pleasure to come on your show.
Thank you. We were talking a little bit before the show, and I was teasing Dr. Goswami. I says, I'm glad that you are an expert in your subject because, when we say the words quantum physics, a lot of people just sort of look sideways like their eyes go crazy.
I know. A little bit glazes over. But really, the word quantum is a very simple word. It just means quantity in Latin. And the way we used it first in physics was to denote a discrete quantity, a discrete amount of energy that cannot be broken down any further. But, that's not the mystery of quantum physics. The word became mysterious because we found that quantum objects are, paradoxically, both waves and particles. Why is it paradoxical? Because if you have watched waves, you know that waves go, expand, and can be at many places at the same time. The reason that we can hear a lecturer from many different places in the audience. Whereas particles, everybody knows, go on a trajectory. They move. They are always in one place at a time, even when they move. So how can the same object be waves that spread out and particles which are completely localized all the time? This is a mystery. This is a paradox, and this is why quantum physics is said to be difficult to understand, or some people say nobody can understand it. But really, understanding is not very hard if you give up the philosophy of science that currently reigns over science. It's called scientific materialism, according to which every phenomenon is a phenomenon of material origin, caused by material interaction, and matter moving in space and time is all we have as the ground of being. This idea has to be given up because the quantum equations clearly say that the waves are not ordinary waves that we see. Instead, the waves are waves of possibility. Waves of possibility. We don't see them in space and time. They reside in a domain of reality called the domain of potentiality, outside of space and time. When we try to observe them, our attempt to observe them, our choice to observe them, manifest these waves into space and time, and they become particles. then there is no paradox. The wave character lies in one domain of reality, the particle character lies in another domain of reality. There's no reason to think in terms of paradoxes. The paradox is that what is in the choice of the observer, what is in the observer, that precipitates the collapse of the wave into a particle. That's the paradox. That's the interesting question to ask. And when we ask that question, we find an astounding answer. It is our consciousness, and not in the form of our separate ego, but in the form of the unity consciousness that spiritual traditions talk about. In the form of that unity consciousness, consciousness chooses out of all the potentiality that a possibility wave offers it, the actuality that becomes a particle in space and time when an observer observes it.
So that is,
was that clear?
Yeah. So that is actually what we call the observer effect.
Exactly. That is the observer effect, and this is why people say we create our own reality, because moment to moment we are. If we are privy to that unity consciousness, we have the power of creating our own reality. Of course, what happens is that we get too sidetracked by the humdrum of life and negative emotions, and so we just lose touch with this unity. And so we drift along, mainly controlled by material forces and conditioning. But we don't have to. We have the choice.
Yeah, I'm being with what you're saying because, I've heard a lot of people talk about this from many different angles. And when we talk about, consciousness and it's the unity consciousness, our ability to actually, as you say, if I got this right, and please correct me, because we're talking about waves and particles. And so we can affect that. In other words, we can sort of break it down or move it around. I'm putting it in very elementary language.
Mm-hmm.
Through our effect upon it or through our awareness of it or our connection with it.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So what is consciousness?
Consciousness is the ground of all being. What is consciousness can be expressed only by describing some of the characteristics of consciousness. For example, existence. Consciousness reveals itself as the subject-object awareness that we experience. Remember, in every experience, we see an object, but there is also the we, I, that sees the object, the experiencer, that is called the subject. So we have this subject-object split awareness. That's part of the conscious experience, consciousness. And then consciousness also have this limitlessness, which when we experience this unity, we feel happy, we feel bliss. Those are some of the characteristics. There are, of course, also the archetypes which define consciousness a lot. The archetypes like love, beauty, justice, truth, they are important aspects of consciousness. If we explore them, we explore deep levels of consciousness, the unity consciousness.
When I heard you speak, you were talking about, and possibly it was two levels of consciousness or awareness. I think it was focal or non-focal. Is that right?
Yeah. There are all kinds of things that we can play with.
Okay.
There is, of course, the most consistent thing that we encounter is our own ego, which is a limited self, conditioned self. But the ego also has a structure. It has the character, the conditioning, the habit patterns, qualities that we learn. In addition, though, it has persona, masks that we put on to interact with different situations, different people, and so forth. Like when you are with your lover, you are one person, and then you are with your parents, you are a completely different person. You are with your boss, you are again another person. These are masks that we put on to suit the different situations, but they're a little inauthentic. And this is where some of the problems with the ego level of awareness arise. If we want to go into unity consciousness, then we want to give up this inauthenticity and be authentic as much as we can. And then the path is not really very difficult. We make it difficult by hanging on to the illusion of that inauthentic persona.
Yeah, because then we use it to define, well, I guess,
who we are.
Yeah, who we are, exactly.
Just look at our president.
Yeah. So could, I'm trying to figure out how quantum physics can help us with that. Maybe you can answer that question. Yeah. So what led you to write this book, the Everything Answer book, the new book coming out?
What happened was very interesting. I have no book translated in the Japanese language. So a organization in Japan felt that my work should get exposure in Japan. It's important. So they invited me to do two things. First of all, give a workshop on my work, and second of all, they arranged a conversation of me with a businessman philosopher, Japanese businessman philosopher. And then we converted this conversation into a book in Japan, which was published immediately. But then they said, well, why don't you go ahead and publish it also in English, because the conversation was cut out in English. All the tapes existed in English. So we got the videos translated and transcribed and rewrote, and there is the book.
That's great. That's a great thing. You know, it kind of ties into what we were talking with the quantum physics and how, you know, I'm being with how you in your own way affected that, you know, how everything comes together, like how to talk about it from your angle of how do we create in our lives, you know?
Exactly.
How do
we don't have to push so hard.
Right.
You know, things tend to happen if we are sensitive. Then we have to be sensitive, and we have to be. The word sometimes is misunderstood, opportunistic. But opportunistic not in the way of cleverness, but in the way of a connoisseur of synchronicity. We have to see meaning in something, and then when the meaning comes to us, we have to act accordingly. And this is precisely what the book is about. The meaning of life becomes very clear to us when we become sensitive to how consciousness operates in our life. It operates through synchronicities, Loretta. If we are sensitive to these synchronicities, meaningful coincidences, life just changes. You know, you begin to see everything that happens around you, are saturated with meaning, and life becomes so meaningful.
I love what you just said. And, you know, you have this beautiful, I'm going to call it energy. It's a consciousness where, and I noticed this when I was talking to you before, that you carry within yourself this raising of consciousness, so that when I'm talking with you, even though these are not subjects, like I don't normally talk about quantum physics in the way that you do, I feel myself almost expanding and entering into that with you. And I think that's probably has something to do with the ease of the way that you navigate this whole thing, your deepest understanding of that.
Thank you. But you know, quantum physics does this to you anyway. I mean, talking about quantum physics is really a wonderful experience.
And I'm being with how we just go into this synchronistic thing. You know, people ask me all the time, well, how do you navigate life? And I go, well, sometimes easily and sometimes a little bit tight. And so if we relax into that, we can maybe access that idea of consciousness. Like you say, you can't really define consciousness. You can sort of define it by what you see as the result of it or what you see around it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because it's the ground of being. It's everything. So whatever you are defining by is also part of consciousness. It can never be whole of consciousness.
So what's the scientific proof that consciousness exists outside the brain?
Well, the scientific proof is twofold. First of all, there is this, what initially was called weird, action at a distance that objects can have. If we correlate to objects by making them interact locally, and then they go apart by even galactic distances, quantum physics predicts that they will still be one thing because they are correlated or entangled. And we can measure the fact that they are communicating. They are still one thing. And those measurements were first done in 1982, and ever since our worldview is changing. For sure, it has to. Because what that says is that objects can communicate instantly, but how? There must be something that is connecting them, and it is consciousness. Some people call it quantum field that's connecting them. So you can also think of consciousness as the quantum field of interconnectedness of objects and things and people.
Then are you saying, does everything have consciousness then?
Everything has potential consciousness.
Ah, okay.
The potentiality of awareness is acquired only by living beings, such as a living cell. It has a rudimentary awareness of itself versus the environment, and brain, of course. By the time we become human beings through evolution, the consciousness, the expression of consciousness in the brain is just an amazing proportion of expansion. So our experience just is incomparably superior to the experience of a single cell like an amoeba.
So quantum physics, I'm hearing you say this really affects the macro world.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, in every way is what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like it
Absolutely.
is the basis for it, like what you were saying before, sort of the groundwork for that everything comes from.
Yes. And as soon as you realize that everything comes from it, then we realize that every experience, not just the material experience, also comes from it. And as soon as you have recognized that mental experiences are also quantum experiences, an idea that David Bohm first suggested a long time ago in the 50s. Nobody noticed it, but it's an amazing idea that mental objects are quantum objects, and just as physical objects are quantum objects. So the physical objects lose their quantum nature to a considerable extent as they become bigger and bigger, as they transit from the micro domain into the macro domain. But the mental objects, they don't have any micro-macro division. So any thought is a quantum thought, and therefore they move away fast. This is why, thoughts come to us and we have to write it down. Otherwise, we cannot retrieve them very easily later on. So that's the quantum nature of thought. As soon as you recognize that thoughts are quantum and there is no micro-macro in the domain of thinking, we realize they're very important because, where do we actually live? If you think about it, we live in the physical house, of course, someplace. Right now I'm talking from my office, fine. But we also live in our mind most of the time, aren't we?
Yeah.
So that shows us how important thoughts are and how important it is to be able to have some control, have some recognition, have some familiarity of how my internal environment is like, where I live, how to make it better. And this, of course, is what a consciousness-based science is enabling us to do. This is why I say quantum physics can make you happy.
Yes, I really followed that. A lot of the work that I do is helping people. We talk about what are your thoughts about this, your beliefs, how are you feeling? And we kind of go in through the doorway of their emotions, like with a lot of current world events, a lot of people are very riled up or fearful. And, I help them kind of go in and say, if within the mind, I think a lot of our pain and suffering is created in there or, from our viewpoints.
Uh-huh.
And so that unity consciousness or that effect that we have upon everyone. I'm kind of following how each one of us can affect that by doing the work on our own self.
Absolutely. And especially in the domain of feeling. Feelings are energies, and these energies, when we start getting access to them and get some control over them and be even creative about them, they can change our life even better because they give a more body to a meaningful life, more passion, more energy, more love, and then you can flower much faster, and your fragrance will reach more people.
I love how you said that, the fragrance. Well, my guest today is Dr. Amit Goswami. We're going to take a little station break. This is the Loretta Brown Show, and we're going to open up the lines if you'd like to call in and ask Dr. Goswami a question. The number here is 425-373-5527 or 1-888-298-5569. It's an absolutely fascinating conversation about quantum physics and consciousness, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Loretta Brown Show, and my guest today is theoretical quantum physicist Dr. Amit Goswami, who is the author of just at least 11 books. His new book, The Everything Answer Book, is coming out April 1st, and they usually have pre-sales of some kind. I'd check it out if I was you. You have an amazing opportunity to ask Dr. Amit Goswami a question on the radio this morning if you call in to 425-373-5527 or 1-888-298-5569. And I have to compliment you on the air, Dr. Goswami. You do such a great job of explaining quantum physics and really helping me to understand. I have a question. What is quantum activism?
This is a very good question because I talk about myself as a quantum activist. What is quantum activism? Ordinary activism tries to change the world, but does not bother about changing himself or herself. In quantum activism, we say that the power of quantum physics is not really illustratable unless you exemplify it. So what one has to do in order to be a quantum activist is to change oneself using the quantum principles. In other words, think quantum, live quantum, make a living in the quantum way. And then your effectiveness in the world that you want to influence, the world that you want to create, will be so much more creative and so much more in consonance with the movement of consciousness that you will succeed. You will be happy in doing it. You will be blissful practically. So that's a quantum activist. A quantum activist then, using the quantum principles, non-locality is one that we talked about, this interconnection that exists between people and things, and people, instant interconnection, oneness, that's called non-locality, connection without local signals. There is no need for any signal because you're just one with the other. Discontinuity, this is a very interesting concept. When electrons jump from one atomic orbit to another, they do not go through the intermediate space. How do they do it? We say it's the discontinuity. We cannot explain it, but it just happens. Quantum leap. So those quantum leaping, we have to become used to it. In creativity, we are quantum leaping. When we are becoming sensitive to intuitions, we are doing a little bit of that same quantum leaping. So this is another way to live quantum and think quantum. The third one is called tangled hierarchy. We become so used to hierarchical living that we don't realize how much we miss out in our relationship, because hierarchical relationships are constrained. They limit us. They separate us. If we make the relationship circular, where you end and where your partner begins is become kind of obscure, you cannot tell anymore where you end and where she begins and where he begins and you end, then this circular relationship produces wonderful oneness of consciousness. And that is a wonderful place to act from, because you are augmenting each other in terms of the depth of consciousness, in terms of creativity, in terms of your ability to create your reality.
So, to put that into, I was in Rishikesh a few years back and had a talk with a guru there, and I remember saying to him, how can I take India back, right? And he merely repeated to me the statement from Gandhi, be the change that you'd like to see in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard you just take that to a new level.
Yes. I mean, quantum physics allows us to make a more detail out of it. What did Gandhi mean when he said, be the change that you want to see in the world? Quantum physics is the physics of manifestation. If you want to manifest a good world around you, this is what you need to do. You have to use the quantum principles to change yourself and the world simultaneously.
Yeah, and I really heard what you said, too, that, the difference between quantum activism and ordinary activism, where they, so many people are trying to change the world right now, but they must change themselves in order to really create that change. And that, if I understand correctly, ties in with the unity consciousness.
Yes, because ultimately it's all that happens is the happenings in unity consciousness. Outside of it, it's just conditioned things taking place on its own by virtue of conditioned movement. And they don't count very much because it's just old meanings, jaded meanings, okay, we eat, we have sex, we sleep, we entertain ourselves, that kind of thing. Pleasure, those things are built into us. Sure, we enjoy them, but no meaning is added to life. How does one add meaning to life? How does one add that additional source of happiness into life? More than just this ordinary availability of pleasurable things. And that is the question, no? This is the question that people struggle with. Quantum worldview gives us clear indication. This is what the book is about. Everything answers book, because if it answers questions of your meaning of life, that is it. You don't need anything else. That is it. So, of course, I also mean it not just figuratively, I also mean it exactly. So it does answer many, many questions about society, culture, economics, biology, everything, life, death. But really, ultimately, to the person that you are, what matters the most is your seeking of meaning of your life. And once you get into the quantum lifestyle, you will find that you are accessing unending new meaning in your life, and it will never, never be unhappy or boring again.
Yeah, the meaning of life. Yeah, that is the big question. The meaning of the universe and the meaning of life.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everything you say, I have to sit with for a moment. So, how can we take this the quantum worldview, to help solve things, like to have that interaction with everything? How can we do it and take it into something like making sure we don't have an economic meltdown? We're all taking a look at what is going on, right? How can we create change? How can we create effect here?
This is the biggest thing that is going on in today's science. Of course, we have technology like cell phone, but how many generations of cell phone will we be excited about? I mean, it's still exciting, I guess, to some people. But I went to the iPhone store and they said, no, if you have 6, you don't need to get 7. It's not really that great anymore. Even these salespeople are telling you that. So what is new in science and technology? The new thing is vital energy. We are learning finally to measure vital energy. Energy is connected with life that only living beings have. And because we are learning to measure them, we are also learning to build technologies that can use vital energy. We use vital energy all kinds of ways anyway, but we don't do it in a very concentrated or efficient manner. For example, flowers have vital energy. Rose has the vital energy of romance. So you give rose to your love object, love being, love partner, and she feels good because, roses have that romantic energy in it. Mm-hmm. Can we take that romantic energy out and put it in a perfume so that it's much more available, is cheap, and most important thing is that, it's not bulky. It can be taken in your purse and kept without being affected. And so, can one do that? We now have the technology of doing it. Can you believe it? We don't have the large-scale technology yet, but in small scale, it's already available. People are doing things like that and selling it. Mm-hmm. So, this vital energy technology, as it becomes large-scale, that will be the biggest innovation in the 21st century, newest innovation. We really are falling behind in innovation. All of our technology is 1950s, 1960s technology. There's been nothing new because creativity is not part of the worldview of scientific materialism, which we live today. Most people. There is about 5 to 10% who are beyond that, who are into quantum worldview and beyond. So that's good. But we need many more people, and they will come as they find out that there's technological progress here to talk about. There is money to be made. There is economy to be saved. People can have better jobs doing these things in terms of both manufacturing and enjoying the products. So we'll just have to create this new world of subtle technologies and subtle economics.
Yeah, I'm listening to you, and I'm going that it's like we need a breath of fresh air coming in, and that comes in through the creativity.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
And I want to touch on that a minute because a lot of people think that creativity requires, you've got to be a genius somehow.
I know.
So how do you propose that an ordinary person accesses or becomes creative?
From the beginning, this has been a driving question. Even when I first started consciousness research, for me, the basic question, how do we access this wonderful power that consciousness, unity consciousness, potentially gives us? Mm-hmm. We have to connect to it. And how do we connect to it? And that is what creativity is about, how we connect to that oneness of consciousness to bring out that extra causal power to create our reality the way we want them. So how do you do it? The creativity researchers have been talking about 4 stages for some time, but nobody understood what these stages signify. Quantum physics allows us to understand them. So let me very quickly go over them. Okay. The first stage is called preparation. That does not require any explanation. You listen to people like some people are listening about quantum physics, creativity today in this radio show, and that's part of preparation. You read, you go to school, knowledgeable people, they tell you things and stuff like that. That's preparation. You also create an open mind. If you have prejudices, that will hold you up. That will put you in a box. You have heard the phrase going out of the box. You have to sort of give up that constraint, the box that you live in. Like scientific materialists have a box of prejudice. Everything is matter. They have to give that up in order to enjoy the quantum worldview, the benefits of creating your own reality. So if you have such constraints, give it up. That's part of preparation. Next stage is called incubation. You are familiar with that word? Bird sits on an egg, but that's doing nothing. So what does doing nothing have to do with creativity? That's the mystery that quantum physics allows you to solve. Waves are waves of possibility in the domain of potentiality we said before. But that same domain of potentiality is unconscious in us because domain of potentiality is one. There's no split between subject and object even in that domain. And so the psychologists, starting with Freud, started talking about this unconscious for some time because they noticed that although the unconscious is never manifest, but the unconscious affects what manifests, what is conscious. And that is not only important for mental disease, as Freud investigated, but Jung already pointed out, Freud's follower, Freud's disciple, already pointed out that no, the same unconscious can also serve us to be creative. And quantum physics now says that yes, even more at a bigger scale than even Jung envisioned. In a scale that's this is the first time you're talking about such a gigantic scale of creative potentiality, infinite potentiality. Not just what we have in memory, but things that we have not manifested before. And this we can manifest. This is within our power. How to manifest it? So we allow the objects, thought objects, feeling objects, subtle objects to become waves of potentiality. And as waves, if you keep them unchanged, if you don't try to affect them, then they will grow and grow, becoming bigger and bigger pools of potentiality, pools of possibility for you to choose from. And then you can choose the creative answer to your problem that you're seeking. And that's called the creative insight, quantum leap. And then the fourth stage, you manifest the idea you got from your quantum leap into a product, and the product can be you. So this is the way it works, but it's a little bit more subtle than that. That was my particular take on this. When I worked on it, a dream came to me, and in the dream, there were some figures, and the figures were very, very active, and they were not static at all. They were always moving, this, doing that, just like us, do kind of thing. And the voice said from the background, it's a dream, right? These are angels of doing. So, okay, and then those angels go away, and other stick figures come, and this time they're just sitting down and they're meditating, not doing anything. And the background voice says, these are the angels of being. But the surprise was that then the angels of being went away, and angels of doing came back, and then again the angels of doing went away, angels of being came back, and when I woke up, the jingle is ringing in my ear, which is dooby dooby doo. And that's the mystery of creativity.
I love that. You were talking earlier about synchronicity, within the unity consciousness. So I'm going to share with you that I used to wear a shirt. I'm a musician, and years ago I wore a shirt, and the first line on the shirt said, "To do is to be." And then it was to be is to do. One of them was Plato, one is Aristotle, and then it was doobie doobie doo, Frank Sinatra.
Right. Yes.
So you see, there's our connection. I just love that. So that is the way to be creative. Just doobie
That is the way to be creative.
Yeah,
it's a new lifestyle. We sometimes, some of my associates are quite aware of the cartoon that you described, and we have added a third line, dooby dooby doo.
Yeah. That's really, really delightful. We're going to take a caller right now, and I want to thank her for holding.
Yep, we'll take Hannah calling in from Seattle. Great questions on board here. Hannah, hello.
Hi.
Good morning, Hannah. How are you?
Good morning. Good. This subject is just fascinating to me. I love it.
Yeah, welcome to the Unity Consciousness with Loretta and Dr. Amit Goswami. Please ask your question. Yeah.
Thanks for taking my call. You were talking about music, and my dad is a musician, not as a living, but he just loves to make music. And he's always saying how when he plays music, he plays the saxophone, or he takes long walks and plays a recorder. And he says, when he plays music, it doesn't come from him. He said it comes from the universe. It comes from somewhere, but it doesn't come from him. He's not thinking about the music. It just comes. And I think that's true for a lot of musicians. They are accessing that enormous, universal creative field, and they don't even have to think about it.
Yes.
I think that's fascinating. I wanted to ask you if you've heard about studies that have been done with large groups of meditators who practice. The studies I've read about were transcendental meditation groups that would meditate peace in areas where there was a lot of violence and war sometimes going on. And during the times when they would meditate, the rate of violence would go down. It could be, statistically measured, and that the rate of violence would go down. And then when they would stop meditating, the rate of violence would go back up again. And I wondered if you had looked at any of those studies. It's just fascinating.
Yes, I have, and there may be some validity to it. Of course, the effect is temporary, and can one, for example, make the effect in any sense permanent by having meditation groups in a city? Those are the questions that one has to answer. Most big cities today have many meditating organizations. But why doesn't that bring the crime rate down? I mean, even take a city like Chicago, big city, big crime, and overall, are there many meditation groups? Yes, there are, indeed. Believe it. I mean, really, we are making changes. 877 million of world's people today are into yoga, and many of them are into meditation as well. So it is absolutely completely within our estimate that there will be some thousands of people that meditate in Chicago every day. But the crime rate, is it affected? So these are more important questions because we need some permanent effect. We don't need the flashy things particularly. I mean, I know that TM has done good research, and I'm not belittling that research. Only thing I'm saying is that quantum activism that I propose is for transformation of people in a general, permanent way. I really would like to see the world change from its transactional way of doing business, relating, what is in it for me, from that mindset to change into a transformational mindset where we look not only at my interest, but also to the interest of the community, of the interest of the society, just of the other. This is important. Otherwise, humankind will be doing great disservice to themselves and to the planet in the long run.
Dr. Goswami, does this play into, because you're talking about quantum activism there, which has its personal aspect and its social aspect. And I think, Hannah, your question is kind of on this, because you talk about the instinctual negative emotional brain circuits and how we need to balance those out. Is that where we bring about that permanent change?
Yes. That permanent change cannot be brought about without realizing that we have these evil things built into us. And unless we learn to balance them, people can manipulate them very easily. In politics, this is what our politicians are doing today. You must wonder why do obvious things, you don't let people go without health insurance. Such obvious things other people cannot see. Why they cannot see is because they are bamboozled by politicians, and how that happens is precisely using these negative emotional brain circuits. If we balance them, then we are not influenceable anymore through these negative emotional brain circuits. And that would be a tremendous gift to humanity. And we are ready to do that, We have satisfied our survival needs. We should go into now to higher needs. And it's a shame that we are still hanging around these same survival needs that we don't need to be concerned about anymore.
I agree. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I love to hear you say these things, and I agree so much. I think many more people would meditate maybe if they just knew how. I think it's difficult even, and I've tried. I've meditated for quite some time, and it's still difficult sometimes just to quiet my mind, because there's such a barrage of information coming at us all the time.
I know. Would you mind if I give you a little bit of meditation exercise?
Quickly, we have 2 minutes left in the show, so
Okay.
if we can make it brief. Thanks.
Very, very quickly. Practice just sitting. This meditation is the best of all. You just take 5 minutes or 10 minutes out of your day to just sitting without fidgeting, just sitting. Sit in a chair or comfortably in a bed, whatever, or in a mat, but just sit without fidgeting. That's all. Nothing else you need to do. Okay?
Okay.
Without fidgeting, Hannah. Thank you so much for calling in, Hannah. That was great. We're down to like our last minute. I think you're talking about the evolution of the mind, and this is like constant conversation in the world that I live in. And do you have any last things to say in this last minute?
Well, I always say the one thing, really look at the quantum worldview and see that it has the recipe for bringing meaning back into your life. And that's what this book, Everything Answer book, is about. Read it and you will find the hints of how to live happily, healthily, and become whole again.
I love that so much. So for the listening audience, this is Loretta Brown. My guest today has been theoretical quantum physicist Dr. Amit Goswami. His new book, The Everything Answer Book, How Quantum Science Explains Love, Death, and the Meaning of Life. And please check it out. Be kind to each other, and do be the change you'd like to see in the world. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks so much. Bye now.